Now, I ain't one to take kindly to city living, not with its screeching carriages and folk packed tighter than cattle in a rail car. But the summer of '89, that was a scorcher, even for a sun-baked soul like me. And it's where our story starts, right in the heart of a restless city, all stone and soot, where dreams either burn out or blaze wild. Her name was Clara-May Bellweather, not the sort to draw attention at first glance, slight, quiet, and hard-working, but there was steel in her bones. She had a look about her like she'd walk through fire and come out with sparks still clinging to her boots. Clara-May arrived in the city with little more than a hammer, a roll of blueprints, and a mule cart of salvaged lumber. Folks laughed, said she was chasing ghosts, said a woman couldn't build nothing but heartbreak and biscuits. She paid him no mind. Found herself a forgotten lot tucked between two factories, one churning black smoke, the other belching out the wail of saws and sweat. She cleared it with her bare hands, tore up weeds with calloused fingers, and laid foundation, stones like she was planting seeds. That's when I saw her. I was working freight by the river, moving crates and trying not to think too hard about all the ways a man could come undone in a place like this. I'd quit the trail life, traded my horse for boots that pinched, and my spurs for a punch clock. But the sound of her hammer, steady, deliberate, not rushed like the city folk, cut through the clamor like an old hymn. Day after day, I watched from a distance. She framed those walls with grace and grit, balanced beams on her shoulder like they weighed no more than a prayer, and nailed down roof slats with a rhythm that made the pigeons quiet. It weren't just a cabin she was building. It was a refuge, a defiance, a home carved from ruin. I'd see her every day on my walk to the docks, face smudged with dust, hair tied up, sleeves rolled to the elbow. And every time I passed, I felt like I was walking past a kind of hope I thought I'd buried out west. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the smokestacks and the streets started to shimmer with the stink of heat and horse, I noticed her sitting on the front step of that half-finished cabin. She was holding a cup of coffee in both hands, staring off like she could still see the place this home used to be in her mind. I tipped my hat. "Mighty fine frame you've raised there, miss." She didn't look over, just said, "It'll stand, whether they believe in it or not." That's when I knew. This wasn't just some summer project or city stubbornness. This was survival, and it was the first time, in a long time, that I wondered if maybe I could stand again, too. I reckon every man carries a shadow behind him, longer than the road he's walked. Mine stretched all the way from the high deserts of New Mexico to the alleyways of this smoke-stained city. Folks called me Hollis back then, leastwise. That's what I told him. The name ain't what mattered. What mattered was keeping my head down, my fists balled, and my heart locked tight. I took to the riverfront 'cause it paid in coin, no questions asked. Didn't need to know why I had a limp or why I flinched when bottles shattered. Just needed strong arms and a back that didn't quit. But that summer, I started talking the long way home, just to pass her street, just to see what she'd done that day. Clara-May was still building, hammering through doubt and heat, stacking her dreams one board at a time. She never once asked for help, would not have taken it if I offered. But one evening, the skies cracked open with a summer thunder that split the air clean in half. Rain fell so sudden, so hard, it felt like God had opened a trap door in the sky. I was passing by, soaked to the bone, when I saw her, perched on the half-finished roof, trying to pull a tarp over her timber stack. Stubborn woman was struggling with the wind and the weight. I don't recall making the choice. My boots just moved. "Hold the rope," she barked when she saw me. Not surprised, not grateful, just practical. We tied that tarp down side by side, our hands slick and our breath short from the climb. When we were done, she just sat back, rain dripping off the brim of her hat, staring at the sky like it had dared her to stop. "Don't reckon many folks would brave a storm for a pile of wood," I said. She gave a dry laugh. "Don't reckon many folks know what this pile of wood means." I didn't ask. She didn't offer. We sat there in the rain a spell longer, like neither of us quite remembered how to share a silence without it feeling like weight. And that was the start of it, I guess. Not love, not yet. Just a crack in the wall between two lost souls. A bit of shelter shared in the storm. Next day, I showed up again. She didn't ask why, and I didn't explain. By mid-July, the heat had grown thick enough to chew. Sweat clung to every collar. Every back turned dark with effort. The city steamed like a stew pot, and folks grew meaner for it. But on Clara-May's little lot, something strange was taking shape. Not just a cabin anymore. No, it was starting to look like a home. She never once hired help. Didn't trust no one with her walls. But she tolerated me. That's saying more than it sounds. I started bringing coffee with me. Strong, bitter stuff from a riverfront stand that used more grit than grounds. First time I offered her a cup, she sniffed it and said, "Tastes like boot leather and bad choices." I told her it was the taste of survival. She sipped it anyway. I'd help with the framework, nailing joists and set-in windows, all without talking much. There was a rhythm to it, working with her, like stacking words in a letter you weren't sure you'd send. Some days we said nothing at all, just the sound of saw teeth and hammer strikes filling the space. She started letting me finish her sentences. When the door frame went up, she stepped back, hands on her hips, squinting through sweat and sawdust. "You ever think maybe I'm building something foolish?" she asked. "Only every day," I said, "but I show up anyway." She smiled then, just a little. That rare kind of smile, the kind that ain't practiced or polite, the kind that slips through when a wall forgets it's supposed to be holding back. That night, she invited me inside what walls we'd raised. The cabin was still roofless, floor bare, but she'd laid a blanket down over the joists, placed 2 chipped mugs on an overturned crate, and lit a little oil lamp that flickered like hope. She poured us each a drink, cheap rye, warm from her coat pocket, and we clinked the cups like it was a fine parlor toast. "To what?" I asked. She tilted her head. "To stubborn things." We drank. The moon spilled in through the rafters, and I reckon we sat there longer than we should have, neither of us saying what we were thinking, just leaning into the quiet like it might tell us something true. And for the first time since I'd wandered into this loud, sweat-slick city, I didn't feel like I was passing through. I felt like I'd stopped. City folk started whispering. They didn't much like the idea of a woman building her own house, least of all with a man hanging around who didn't quite fit into their paper-thin notions of proper. Didn't help that neither me nor Clara-May much cared for their opinions. "They think I'm too loud," she said one morning, yanking up a board like it owed her money. "Too willful. Too much." I handed her a nail and muttered, "Ain't enough women like that." She paused, looked at me sideways. "And you? What do they say about you?" I smiled without showing teeth. Nothing I care to repeat in daylight. We kept hammering. But shadows grew longer each day. Not just the ones cast by the city smokestacks, but the kind that cling to folks who ain't left their pasts as far behind as they'd like. One evening, after a day hotter than sin and twice as miserable, I found Clara-May sitting on the stoop of her half-built porch, a letter clutched in one hand, a half-empty bottle in the other. Her knuckles were white, her eyes darker than usual. "Bad news?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. She didn't look at me, just handed over the letter. It was from some bank outfit down in Charleston. Said the land she'd claimed wasn't rightly hers, was being sold off to settle someone else's debt. Her father's, sounded like. Long dead, but still causing trouble. I folded the letter slow, like it was made of glass. "Wasn't his debt I came here to bury," she whispered. "Wasn't him I wanted to outbuild." "Then who?" She didn't answer, and I didn't press. Instead, I sat down beside her, the bottle passing between us like a peace offering. The city lights flickered dim behind brick and glass, and the sound of horse hooves echoed distant and lonely. "Don't matter what they say," I finally said. "You built something real. They can't take that." She turned to me then, real slow. "You always this sure about other folks' fights?" "No," I said, "but I reckon I ain't just watching anymore." Her hand found mine, fingers rough and calloused, warm with fight. She didn't hold on long, just long enough. That night, I slept with one eye open, not out of fear, but 'cause I knew the wind was changing. And when it did, everything we'd built would be tested. The heat broke 2 nights later, and with it came more than rain. Trouble has a smell, same as a fire before it takes, and I caught a whiff of it soon as I rounded the corner that morning. Clara-May's cabin, her refuge, her triumph, was scattered like kindling. Someone had come in the night, torn the frame from its bones, snapped the beams, cracked the joists, and flung her dreams across the lot like trash. She was already there, standing in the wreckage, fists clenched, breath shallow. Her hammer lay at her feet, untouched. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just stared. I'd seen ruin before. I'd seen homes burned, cattle rustled, folks buried without ceremony. But this was different. This was spite. Coward's work. Who? I asked low. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. We both knew the city had its ways of reminding outsiders where the lines were drawn, especially women who didn't know their place, especially men like me who didn't ask permission. The sheriff came by near sundown, too late to be of use, and too polite to be sincere. Probably just some boys fooling, he said. Can't prove nothing. Clara-May didn't say a word. She didn't even look at him. Just brushed sawdust off her apron and went back to gathering what she could salvage. That night, I didn't leave. I sat with her as she laid out each board like a body to be mourned. The lamp flickered between us, and the city beyond our little world never looked more distant. I ain't starting over, she said. I watched her steady. You don't have to. I'm finishing. I'll build it again. Higher. Stronger. They'll have to burn the whole block to stop me. And in that moment, with the wind rustling the tarps and her eyes churning fierce in the lamplight, I knew it. She wasn't building a house. She was building herself. And no man, no law, no banker's letter or midnight raid was going to tear her down again without a fight. I stayed with her that night. Didn't sleep. Just kept my hand near my coat, where the old revolver still lived, just in case. Come morning, we went to the lumber yard together. We didn't ask. We took what we needed. The city watched us rebuild. Not with kindness. Not with help. Just them same narrow eyes behind drawn curtains and half-lowered shades, muttering about how some folks don't learn when they're beat. But Clara-May, she didn't just rebuild. She rose. We worked faster this time. Not out of fear, but fury. Each nail drove in like a declaration. Each board set with defiance. The kind of labor that makes your hands raw and your back scream, but keeps your soul fed. Word spread. Some folks began bringing little things, a bag of nails, a tin of paint. Quiet support from the few who'd watched her swing that hammer and seen not just a woman, but a storm made flesh. One day, a young fellow brought over his toolbox, said his pa wouldn't miss it. She nodded, let him stay. By week's end, the walls stood proud again. Roof trusses reached to the sky. The door hung straight, and windows caught the light just right. But pride has a scent too. And the men who tore it down once, they didn't like being defied. It was a Tuesday night, hot, airless, too still. The kind of night where even the rats keep quiet. Clara-May had gone to the corner grocer for flour. I was sweeping sawdust from a stoop when I smelled it. Smoke. Thick, sour, crawl up your throat smoke. I turned and saw flames licking up the back wall of the cabin. A barrel of rags had been doused. A match struck, the coward long gone. Fire spread fast. The walls groaned. Windows cracked. I didn't think. I ran in, tore down what I could, kicked open the rear frame to starve the fire. But it was a losing fight. Heat swallowed every breath, filled the space with its sin rage. My coat caught. My sleeve burned. I stumbled out with nothing but black lungs and blistered palms. When Clara returned, she saw the wreckage, and she saw me, sitting on the step, smoke still clinging to my coat. They burned it again. I rasped. She stood there, jaw set, body trembling, with more than just fury. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She dropped the sack of flour, walked over, and knelt beside me. Then she whispered the only words I ever needed to hear. Then we build it in brick. There's a rhythm to set in brick, slow, deliberate, like laying down truth you can't take back. Clara-May traded wood for clay, hammer for trowel. And when folks saw her lay that first brick, they knew she wasn't just building a house. She was calling the city's bluff. She took a job at the foundry 3 streets over, dragging slag and iron like the men, working twice as hard for half the pay. She saved every penny for mortar and lime, brought bricks 2 at a time in a wheelbarrow, with one wheel always wanting to quit. I kept to her side. My hand still burned from the fire, but I worked through it. Didn't say nothing when they bled. She didn't say nothing either, just passed me the next stone. The days got longer, and the streets started whispering again, but this time they weren't sneering. They were watching. One day, that sheriff wandered by, trying to look casual. He tipped his hat and muttered, "Didn't think you'd try again." Clara wiped the sweat from her brow and said, "You didn't think." He didn't come back. By August, the wall stood 3 bricks high. She laid him straight, strong, like each one was a fist raised skyward. We worked under lanterns at night, through rains that soaked our boots and soaked our resolve. We didn't speak of the men who burned the first cabin. We didn't speak of the bank or the deed or the letters that still arrived in red-stamped envelopes, because none of that mattered. Not anymore. One night, she leaned back against the fresh wall, eyes tired but blazing. "This time," she said, "they'll need a cannon to take it down." I nodded. "And if they bring one?" She smirked, lips cracked and paint-streaked. "Then we'll build a better cannon." There was laughter in her voice, but steel too, the kind of laughter that knew pain and held it close, like a secret weapon. And maybe that was the moment I stopped holding back. I reached out, took her hand, calloused, sun-warmed, and covered in dust. She didn't pull away, didn't speak, just held on, like she'd been waiting. Come September, the brick cabin stood taller than any building on that block. The windows framed the sky, the door hung true, and the chimney reached like a fist toward heaven. Inside, the floor was bare but swept, clean, waiting. Clara-May walked the place like a general inspecting her troops. She ran her hand along the mortar, tested the hinges, eyed the roofline. She was proud, and rightly so. I reckoned that summer changed both of us. I'd come to the city not expecting hope, just a place to forget. And she'd come to carve out something permanent in a world that called women temporary. Word got round. Even the paper came by, snapped a picture, her standing by the brick wall, arms crossed, jaw set. They called it the house that Grit built. She didn't smile in the photo, didn't need to. A week later, she threw open the door and said, "It's done." We stood in the doorway a long time, neither of us crossing the threshold. "Feels like stepping into something holy," I said. She nodded. "It is." We moved in slow, together. Set up a cot, a stove, and a chair apiece. Cooked our first meal over the fire, just beans and bread, but it tasted like a feast. That night, we sat on the porch, side by side, watching the city lights blink through the dusk. She looked over at me, voice soft as the first snowfall. "You ever think you'd settle?" I thought on that. Took a breath. Not until now. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full. Full of bricks, sweat, hope, fire, and second chances. They tried to tear her down. They tried to forget me. But together, we built a place that stood. A home born of hands, held together by grit. And love, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need a name to be known.